Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography. Listen in as we welcome guests from all specialties of wildlife and nature photography. We share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome to the very first episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Myself, Ron Hayes, coming to you from Wyoming, and some familiar faces and voices also with me tonight. Mark Raycroft.
Hey, Ron, happy to be here. Excited to have a new podcast launching. Surprise, surprise.
Finish it. Surprise, surprise. Oh,
what's the finish?
It's a movie line.
You stumped him.
Actually, it's not a movie line. It's from the UFC.
Oh, well, I'll finish it then. If you know it, man.
Nope,
surprise,
I can't.
surprise.
This is a family show, Mark. I can't do it.
I see. I don't know that. All right.
And coming to us from Utah, Jason Untamed Loftus. Since we're talking about the UFC, we got to give your fight name.
There you go. I like that one. I'm gonna have to steal that. That's awesome. It's good to be back, guys. Good to see you guys too.
So we haven't recorded a podcast since April, and Wild and Exposed kind of ran its course. We have been fielding a lot of questions from people since that time, since we kind of went off the air, and felt like this was something that we want to continue. We want to get back together. It's been a long time since we've done anything in combination with Mark. And so we reached out, and Mark was interested, and we're grateful that you took us up on it. Get the Mark, the voice Raycroft back on. There's Mark's fight name.
I don't know if that's a good enough fight name, Ron.
No, we'll work on it.
Roar the voice. I don't know. How do you play that as a fight name? We'll work on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just did. I think you just sealed it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we missed all of you too. We had it's not just recording. It's not just the guests, although we do miss visiting with new people, meeting new people, hearing what's going on in different parts of the world. The interaction with everybody that listened. And so that's something that we definitely want to continue. And thank you both. Jason, actually, Pictureline camera store in Salt Lake City reached out to Jason, and has been reaching out to Jason actually for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And so we were fortunate that they sponsored this new project. Jason, tell us a little bit about Pictureline and Colin and Jens and the staff there.
Yeah. Pictureline's just, they've just kind of filled in the gap for me. It's a local store for me. It's here in Salt Lake City. A lot of you may already know of Pictureline. They have an online presence at pictureline.com. They have a brick and mortar store as well there in Salt Lake City. And they're just really, really good with customer service. They offer anything you need for your camera, photography needs, video needs. They have a very knowledgeable staff. They take customer service very seriously. And that's what really sold me on, partnering with Pictureline is it's good to know that when we have, specials going on, any kind of opportunities with a discount code or whatever, that as the listeners get those opportunities, that we know that when we send them and send you guys to Pictureline, they're going to be responsive and they're going to meet your needs and then some. I think every time I've worked with them, I've been blown away. My expectations have been surpassed. So really looking forward to this partnership and really looking forward to working with Jens and Colin specifically, but the whole Pictureline team.
And on their Instagram, you can see there are quite a few very talented photographers from all genres. who are connected with Pictureline and who source material from them, their camera gear, etc. But just the quality, you can tell the relationships are strong based on that as well.
Yeah.
Man, that voice. And there, he's got to water up.
I missed it. I missed it too. I think everybody out there is listening so now. People are just melting right now.
And you guys, Jason even posted on Instagram today that they have the Nikon 400 with the teleconverter in stock. Yep. If your pockets are deep and you want one of the best lenses on planet Earth, it's in stock at Pictureline. Yep. Yeah. Love to have it.
Did you order it, Mark?
Did not. No.
Not yet.
It's funny. I sent that out. No. I sent that out, and a lot of the responses were, I said, "What are you waiting for? It's in stock now." And most people were like, "Well, I'm waiting to win the lottery, sell a kidney, whatever." So,
I think 2024 actually is what I've been saving my extra kidney for. The promises of the R1, the R5 Mark II, the 200 to 500 from Canon, and this new teleconverter that they've been teasing us with for almost a year. That's supposed to be, make your pictures better even than what they could have been. Yeah. Shouldn't have switched back, Mark.
Patience.
It's all coming, and you have two kidneys too, so you would have been just fine.
I look forward to talking about all that stuff on another episode coming up, perhaps. Yeah. About the cameras and choices and why and that kind of thing, and where things are at with gear. I am excited about the content of this episode and what you guys have agreed to share that has not been yet as well. But I don't know.
Why can't you share about it, Mark?
Because I wasn't there, Ron. I wasn't there at all.
What? Were you invited? Were you invited, though? That's what I want.
I had been invited. Thank you. Yes, I had been invited. And it was one of those situations. It was really, really tough decision, just like not ordering a 400 or 600 with the teleconverter, those amazing top two lenses for Nikon. This trip was it was a monetary decision, and it's a tough one, right? I mean, we can only do so many trips a year. What's important for their portfolio to sell? What's important for life experiences as our days tick by? What do we want to do? Who's going? Big thing was who was leading this trip was somebody that, I was very familiar with, as were you guys. And the fact that the group of people that had signed up to go, you two included, would be a phenomenally fun experience. So all that weighs in. So I really, really wish I could have or did go. In hindsight, I'd love to have the memories, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything about this trip, because it's one of those truly lifetime experience opportunities. I mean, I know there are people that have done it more than once, but just to have done it and see that part of planet Earth and photograph in that environment, it's so different. And the strategies and what you do, as will be revealed in the podcast, is different as well, those challenges. So I would have loved to have been there. So that sad story aside, I'm really excited that, you guys have agreed to make this first episode about that amazing trip and can shine light on an area that very few people have been to, and why you went and what the amazing experiences were. Like, did you get any photographs?
Hardly any, really.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
It was really slow the entire time.
Did the fingers freeze up? Was that the problem?
The first
batteries on the Canons? Well, that was it. The Canon batteries didn't last.
Oh, Canon batteries did awesome. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No,
right.
we could have done 4 trips. Never had to charge anything.
Well, I don't
Partly
know. That's
because we had our.
You want to blow through your batteries, but not due to cold. Sorry, Jason.
Sorry. Partly just because we had our cold case gear too, right, Ron?
We did. Yeah.
Yep. And that actually
they
helped.
work great. They're cell phone cases, but we used them for our camera batteries, and you tuck them in close to your body inside your outer layer, but they insulate on their own. And then the other issue was, and we'll get to this part of the story, but when we all almost fell into the ocean, they float.
That helps with your buoyancy.
They seal up and they float. Yeah.
Wow. And that's, one of the exciting things about this podcast as we evolve in the near future and develop and have everything completed, like the website, is when we mention something, we can provide links, that can educate you further if you're curious about items like cold case gear, and then where it can be found most readily for you as well. Mm-hmm. It's coming, but we just want to get this going. We want to get it out. Yeah. We want to share the stuff with you and get back in the game of podcasting with this content that we're also passionate about. So, where is it that you went and when? We went to,
so I'll just tell you. So on our previous podcast lives, we had a guest on, Swain, and he got in contact with another podcast listener. It was a bit of a love story. So the two of them, actually, Jeanette, Photogenetics, reached out to us and said they had some dates open and asked if we could fill a trip to Svalbard. And so I looked at their prices. I knew what other trips like that cost. And I thought, this is somewhere that I just personally, it's a once in a lifetime trip for me. And it's somewhere that I've always wanted to visit. I've always wanted to photograph polar bears in the wild. And so I thought, let's put a trip together, make it affordable for as many people as we can. We filled the trip. So I contacted Jason. I reached out to Mark, you and Mike. And we filled the trip in about 2 hours. And I had people contact me, and I was giving Jason a hard time because it's like, I said there were some people that I was going to talk to, but I didn't have time, because as soon as I told Jason, there was like 6 people. So what ended up happening is Jason filled half the boat, I filled half the boat, and we had, number one, an incredible trip, as you'll hear. But number two, there's so many people that I want to spend time with in the field, but it didn't work out for 3 people because we had a boat change due to circumstances beyond our control, which also changed the dates. So we had to get 3 replacements, and, I'm sure it would have been great to go with those that weren't able to make it. And I promise you actually, we ran into one of them in the field later in Churchill. But the people that went, it was just an amazing group of people, and did some things that even I wouldn't have expected, even on that trip, with Russ and his PhD in ornithology, and Myrna Pierman, who's an ornithologist out of Alberta. With those two on the boat, it became this birding challenge, and try to find something that Russ didn't know what it was, or Myrna didn't know what it was, and it didn't happen. It was awesome. I don't know, Jason, what's your...
Oh man, it really was a trip of a lifetime, and just the experience. You're right. These kind of trips, and Mark, you alluded to this early on, these kind of trips are just amazing, and they're very expensive, and they're hard to do, and you got to save your money for them, and you sacrifice not getting some gear to do them and all those things. But at the end of the day, it is a trip of a lifetime, and the experience itself, and then the people that we shared it with, like you said, really does make it for a special experience. And we'll go down the list of the days and what we did and everything, and share some of those experiences. But, they're burned in my mind. And it's funny, I was just doing my annual, create my photo book. and I came across I was doing my 2023 photos, and I got to my Svalbard images, which was fairly early on. And I realized that I had so many images that I wanted to, capture and print, that I ended up just creating a standalone book for Svalbard. And I'm really glad I did. And I'm still working on my 2023 book. But so now I've got this awesome book that I can go back and look at. And as I look through it, every image brings back a memory of who was there and, all those moments and those experiences. And it was incredible there. And we'll get into it, I'm sure, but just everything about it, from being in Longyearbyen and spending a couple of days there, and, the experience we got to experience there, Constitution Day, on and on down the line, getting on the boat, living on the boat for 7-8 days, Ron?
8 days. Yeah.
8 days.
8
yeah.
full days. Anyways.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm kind of leading into it a little bit, but everything about it was just incredible. So if you get a chance, do it.
In life, I mean, we have a lot of wonderful experiences that don't require travel or adventure, family, loved ones, friends, all kinds of simple things day in and day out in the present that we, should enjoy. But making memories on trips and voyages and expeditions like this one that you two went on, it's one of the things that fills the bucket, fills the soul for me. This planet's mind-blowingly amazing when you start thinking about the animals and variety of environments and ecosystems, and just it could never be done in a lifetime. And to have eco tours that give access the way this one did, and the experience and the ease of potential ease, nothing's perfect, but of success on trips like this, I think it really completes people's lives who are passionate about wildlife and nature photography, or just, being out there and experiencing it. And, it's something even, minor segue, people on our tours, not everybody's a photographer. Some people come along just to be there, it's worth, in my opinion, planning these longer, big trips when it's possible, saving for them, even if it's a couple of years out, booking it, and that builds anticipation and excitement and something to look forward to, and just, all kinds of layers to it. But it's a priority annually, right, to try and figure out, if or how many or which trips we can do. In Svalbard, Norway, I mean, wow, right? It's just mind-blowing to see firsthand. And I looked up a couple of things before asking you guys about how the trip started for you and the travel part getting there. The estimate population for Svalbard in 2023 is 2,530 people. That's just, crazy, right? It's such a different, and I haven't been there. So just like our audience, I can't wait to hear what it was like when you landed. And
it was 2,542 when we got there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna message Wikipedia, but I was temp though. That was April, right? This is April.
It was May.
Sorry, yeah, because it bumped, right?
It was supposed to be April, yeah, but we got. Okay. So what happened was we had a Swedish vessel that we were supposed to be on, the Malmo, and it flunked. So the previous couple of years through COVID, all of the inspectors, the boat inspectors, basically were not allowed to go out into the field. So it'd been like 2 years since these boats had been inspected. Well, the crew of the previous boat, it sounded like, was a little rough and a little green and might have bumped into some things which did some damage to the hull. And so it wasn't very long before we were supposed to depart. What, Jason, like 6 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
before we were supposed to depart, that we got word that the boat was not seaworthy and our trip was either had to be changed, which meant everybody had to redo flights. Everybody had to redo their vacation requests. Carla Cox runs a daycare, and, one of the guests, and she had got somebody to take over her business, her personal business, for 10 days or 12 days. And she had to totally renegotiate all that. So it was difficult. And that's when I say there was a few people that weren't able to make it. Scott Stone, another friend of ours, he had lined up 3 people, and Scott, his group, none of them could make the switch. Chad had, his daughter was graduating high school, and obviously he can't miss that. And we got bumped back into May. So it ran into that season. And then the other 2 guests that were coming with him just couldn't make the change and couldn't make the new dates. And so that was short notice. And then we had to find people to take those spots. And so we Russ and Donna from Colorado/Alaska, and then Ray from Alaska, who's a friend of ours from previous podcasts. They all agreed to come. And then it was that last spot that we were having trouble filling, and it ended up being a gal from Denmark who was sick the whole time, but she was hilarious, Maria. We had a lot of fun getting to know her, but she filled the final spot, and so we had a full boat, and we're able to go ahead and go on the trip. So that was an adventure in and of itself, and then getting there was the next adventure for everybody.
So what's that look like for this trip as far as, what did you pack and the flights going over? I mean, just so people who are just curious about it, not even those thinking about doing it, but I mean, if we can share what it cost roughly then, and then what the experience was like, is it like flying halfway around the world? How many stops? Was it a good adventure? I mean, I can't wait to hear what it was like when you landed, but I mean, that's a big part of it because you're traveling so far.
Mm-hmm. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of and most of these trips are like this for me. And until you get a few of them under your belt, it's really kind of hard to understand, like, what lens and what gear do I want to take, right? And then it's, how am I going to get it there safely? Because there's always a chance that you could be on a smaller plane where there's not enough overhead room to put a check bag. And if you have your camera gear in something, I don't like checking my bag if I don't have to. So anyways, long story short, I bought a Pelican Air, and it's the smallest one they make that you can fit gear in, and it'll fit a 400, a couple bodies, and another lens, basically. So I ended up going that route, and that worked out great. I was able to keep it with me the entire time and put it in the overhead. Then I had another small backpack that I carried with me that could go under the seat, that had a couple extra lenses and some batteries and a lot of good stuff in it. All my photography gear, basically, and some other essentials. And then I packed a check bag for all my clothes and everything, and just took that chance, right? You always hear, maybe you don't want to check your clothes, maybe, because what if your bag gets lost, then you're without gear. But we did know that landing in Oslo and then Svalbard, that we would, that Longyearbyen, that we would be able to have access to sports stores and things of that nature if we needed to, in emergency situation, buy a parka or something, whatever. So took that risk. I packed like I was going to the Arctic, right? I'm not trying to be funny, but like layers is always good when you're in the cold, right? So I tried to just pack with layers. I took, long sleeve options. I took short sleeve options even. And believe it or not, up there in the Arctic, we had a couple days that time of year where it wasn't like warm, but it wasn't freezing cold either. It was actually very comfortable when the sun was out in a lot of cases. So still cold weather, see your breath type weather, but very comfortable with the sun out. So, packed that way. Took some boots that I could wear when I was going out into the zodiacs and things of that nature. And when we got there, we learned that a lot of the safety suits we overpacked, probably because they have safety suits that you can wear.
Everybody overpacked for sure.
Right, everybody overpacked for sure, but none of us knew, right? And we used, I did take my Heat Company gloves, and those came in clutch a couple times for sure. And I just tried to make sure I was set up with 2 options. One, something I could wear around my neck, on me that was a little shorter, wider angle. And then I did also take my, my 600 and my 400. I took my 600 in a separate bag. Because I just didn't know, like, you might be not able to get on the Zodiac. And even if you can on the Zodiac, you might not be close enough to the bears where, you still need that reach. to reach out and get the shots that you want. So long story short, ended up working that really didn't need the 600 too much. I did use it a few times. I'm glad I had it, especially for some birds and stuff. But the 400 was the one I used the most, and it came in pretty clutch. So yeah. And then I don't know, Ron, what we flew from Salt Lake City.
There was 12 people that went, and almost everybody took, except for the people who were traveling together, of course, took a different route. It was crazy.
Oh, that's right.
Like, yeah. Because like Jason started out in Salt Lake City, and then you guys hit
Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Then Atlanta to Oslo. We had a direct flight from Atlanta to Oslo.
Interesting.
So that was nice, right? And then for us, we stayed the night. All of us stayed the night. We got there in Oslo roughly the same time. It's different times, but that same evening. And then we stayed in a hotel overnight. It was a pretty short little stay. We had enough time to run into downtown Oslo and see some stuff and, grab a little bite real quick or whatever, and rode this. They have a bullet train of sorts. I think it went like 120, 140 miles an hour, something like that. So we took that train into town, took it back, and then stayed the night and got up early the next morning and caught a flight from Oslo to Longyearbyen. And we had to do a stop in a little island called Tromsø. And it was it was a whole process, right, Ron? Because you get to Tromsø and you have to deplane,
take everything with you. Then you have to go through customs and get your passport checked and everything. And then you go back on and get on the exact same plane. And then you take off and go to Svalbard. And it's because of how Svalbard's set up. Yeah. Svalbard is controlled by Norway. However, it's accessible to several other countries. There were Russian mining towns there. There were Japanese fishing villages up in the north where we never were able to get to. A lot of different nationalities can get there via, watercraft. And so they have to check. That's the last place that they can go through customs, so to speak. So that's why they had to deplane and replane there. And I went from Denver to Munich. And so I wanted to make it as multicultural as I could while we were there. So I went to Munich. I had beer and sausage in the Munich airport for breakfast one day. And this guy thought I was absolutely nuts because nobody orders it for just one person. And I didn't know how to read the sign anyway. So I just pointed and I had way too much food and beer. And then Munich to Oslo. And then, like Jason said, I got there late in the evening. We made it to my hotel in time to sleep for 3 or 4 hours and then back up and went back for the flight to Tromsø and then on to Longyearbyen. And these guys got there a day ahead of me and had gone out already for, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself, but had gone out one day for Arctic fox. And it's kind of funny. It's one of those local knowledge things, where the carcass dump is maybe, and that's where the Arctic fox hang out. But then when I got there, I flew from Oslo to Longyearbyen with Swain and Jeanette. So when I got there, Swain had a rental car. So I went and dumped my stuff in the hotel or in the house. I guess we got a Airbnb that I jumped in with these guys that were already there, Jeff and Angie and Jason and Kelly. And then I went out with Swain and Jeanette, and it was crazy, like in Wyoming. And Mark, I know you've got green belts there in your area where there's a lot of deer and that kind of thing. And Wyoming, you drive through any community in Wyoming, there's pronghorn running around and deer in town and that kind of thing. But you just don't think of what it's going to be somewhere totally new. And we got there and holy crap, there was all kinds of, there was ptarmigan right on the airport grounds. There was 2 species of geese. We saw, eiders, common, and king
And
eiders.
king. Yeah.
Right in town. And then we sat down at the restaurant that night and there's reindeer running right down the street, right there in Longyearbyen. So it's like being in a Wyoming town, but it's a totally foreign atmosphere, totally different species everywhere you looked. And so all those species I was looking forward to photographing, but I didn't anticipate seeing them, from the walk from the VRBO to the Airbnb to the restaurant kind of thing. The first day I froze my butt off. I literally got out and I'll put up a picture of this reindeer was like balled up like a dog. It was cold, it was windy, totally snow covered, balled up like a dog. And I wanted that shot and was hoping that I didn't spook it. And that thing was going nowhere. It was warm and it was away from the wind, so it wasn't going to get up, thankfully. But I laid out on this flat, and wind chill wise, it was probably 30, 40 below Fahrenheit that first day that I got there. And it was their second day, but it was brutal. And I thought, holy crap, I may not have brought enough clothes. Because going back to what you asked, I packed like 4 different layers of wool, everything wool that I had. And then I brought my dad, who passed away, 10 years ago now. My dad had this wool windstopper sweater, and I wanted to have a little piece of my dad with me on the trip. So I took his sweater, and then he had a wool hat, and I wore that, most of the time. But that was my outer layer. It had that windstopper shell, and that helped quite a bit. But as it turns out, that was the worst day, weather-wise. And it was from day one, it was amazing.
And that was the worst day by a long shot. By a long shot. I was blown away by the contrast, because I was like you. I think all of us there were like, uh-oh, we get on the water with this, we're in trouble. Yeah,
we're in for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so that's the next question I had, but just to give people more insight quickly on Svalbard, it consists of a remote archipelago of Arctic islands with 9 main islands and has a total land area. It's bigger than I thought. But the scale, right, when you get up there, is 24,209 square miles. So there's a lot of land through the islands. And it's so cold that trees don't even grow there, right? Did you see trees anywhere?
Nope.
Nowhere.
No.
Okay. Totally barren that way. So when you arrived and you had that day, what an introduction to see all those species right away and have a chance to get kind of an iconic image of a reindeer, which is the same species as caribou in North America, albeit a different subspecies, and they're a little smaller in stature in Svalbard.
Stockier. Yep.
But to get that shot right away, did it work? Did you get it with the snow and like the ideal winter caribou?
The toughest part about that shot was exposing it. So because you're shooting in snow on snow, white on white. So to maintain the detail.
But don't you have mirrorless? Don't you have what you see is what you get?
Yeah.
Doesn't Canon do that?
No, you don't have to pay attention to
but
your
you don't know what kind of detail you're going to end up with. But it makes it easy. But yeah, exactly. So you bracket the heck out of it so you can bring out the detail in the reindeer, and then also the grains in the snow, that kind of thing. So
shoot raw file formats for
I
that.
shoot raw.
Always
right?
shoot raw.
I don't have the t-shirt like Fro, but I do shoot raw.
Jared Poland, right? Great YouTuber for gear. Very enthusiastic. Yeah. But that's where you need to shoot raw, right?
Absolutely.
JPEGs could work and simplify things, but again, when we talk about trips like this, the money, the time, the lack
we'll talk about that
repeating it.
JPEG thing later.
Oh, is there a reason to talk about it later?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm still
I didn't know.
I'm still a little chapped. It's a little fresh in my psyche.
Oh man.
To discuss right now, but we'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, in that situation, raw. All situations, raw. But anyway, so The next step is you're all getting together and you're boarding the vessel to set off to sea.
Yeah, and Jason kind of touched on it, but we didn't know anything about this until we got there. But we showed up on the Norwegian Independence Day. Was the day that we actually departed. So it was May 18th. Was the day that we departed on the boat, the Freya. But we got to experience Norwegian Independence Day, and it was really pretty cool. I mean, everybody showed up, and a lot of people were in like traditional dress, traditional footwear. You know, they had clothing that was reindeer and seal and you know, very, very traditional. And just to see the pride that people took in their country and their community. And, you know, I didn't realize that Norway has only been independent since the 40s, the 1940s. So it's still pretty new for them. And so there was a lot of national pride in it. You know, I think it's something that we're missing here at the point that we're at. To be quite honest, it was fun to watch. Little kids, you know, everybody was waving a flag. Everybody, even us. I went in and had to buy one at the store. But it was fun to experience, and got some video clips and some images of just the celebration and the parade and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, real quick, it did make for a fun thing to photograph too. I took a ton of photos of just the people and their signs and just the celebration. And a couple more things about Longyearbyen real quick. Some interesting things, right? If you die on the island, or if you're going to die, they ship you off the island because they don't bury people on the island. It's Arctic tundra, right? And interesting, like, what do they do for a living, right? They're mainly coal mining. And there's still a tradition of trapping and fishing and stuff like that too. Mm-hmm. And we were able to go to, there's a museum on there that talks a lot about their history and, you know, where they used to hunt and trap polar bears and seals and whales and all those kind of things. And believe it or not, and this might be a little controversial for some, and I understand, but they still do in Norway. It's very common to still serve whale. I didn't know that. I was surprised and shocked when we saw it on the menu, and we did order one for the table so we could, you know, for those that wanted to try it, could try it. But that's, you know, again, when in Rome, right? It really is fun to experience the culture and try to ingrain yourself in the culture and have that experience. So the fact that we hit the Independence Day too was just awesome. It just made for a big part of the trip too. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on a couple of those
Perfect
things.
Timing. Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and you talked about the archipelago, Mark, the island. A lot of people just call it Spitsbergen, and that's actually the island that we were on in the archipelago. That's where Longyearbyen is, but the town, the actual township where we were is Longyearbyen, and it was the most populous area, but there certainly wasn't 2,500 people there. Or what did you say? 2,500
no,
or
that was
25,000?
Right. Yeah, but all of Svalbard. Yeah, it was estimated. Yeah. It fluctuated between a few years and 200 or 300 people, but the fact it's only about 2,500. I mean, that's very, very low from what we're all used to, right?
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And it's a very different way of life. I mean, just surviving in that climate is a different way of life. So, you know, it's an educational experience in a foreign land and great history. It just suck it in like a sponge, right? I mean, just appreciate how these people survive and what they do historically in this environment. Another interesting thing I stumbled on when researching Svalbard too is that cats are banned. And I also want to follow up, Jason, on that, but there's no cats allowed because of the open terrain and the concern about them preying on birds and wildlife. So I saw some little joke about there are a couple for some reason that I didn't unearth what that was, but cats as a whole are banned in Svalbard. But I wanted to ask Jason, follow up on your question about when somebody perishes and they are not buried there, they're taken out to sea. But where, man? What happens there? I mean, where do they go?
Oh, I don't know that they take him out to sea. I honestly don't know where they take him. I think they take him to Oslo, to be honest, back to Norway. But I don't honestly know if they bury him at sea or what. But
I know this we're going beyond the wild with these questions.
Yes, we are.
with it's just facts of life, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe they're cremated and so they can't be buried in the ground, or is that something maybe they don't believe in? Who knows, right? I mean,
yeah, honestly, don't know. It's a really good question.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if you know wrong.
Back to wildlife photography. So the Independence Day was the timing. I mean, that was serendipitous. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be able to experience and see that in a way that's a bonus of the trip being delayed, and to witness that, then I appreciate the people so much more. And when you travel, I mean, around the globe, there are destinations that are renowned to be inviting and friendly. How did you find the people as a whole, or did you interact with very many people, given that it's a short time frame, right?
Mostly the people at the businesses. And I was kind of surprised. I don't know about you, Jason, but I was kind of surprised there weren't even that many Norwegian people working there. A lot of the stores and shops and restaurants were, people from Sweden, from Denmark, from all over the place. And not just, not just the, I guess, what would you call that? There's a lot of people from Finland too. So all of those countries, European countries, were represented there.
Cool.
So that was kind of a surprise to me. It wasn't like nobody was from there that we talked to. I'm sure there were people that did grow up there, but we didn't really find too many of those folks. Yeah. And everybody was friendly. I'd say it wasn't.
Well, I'd say they were so friendly so one thing that blew my mind is we went to the grocery store the one day and there was a bunch of baby carriages sitting outside in the cold with babies in them, but nobody around. The moms they pull the strollers up there, leave the babies in the stroller all bundled up nice and warm. They go and do their shopping, come back out and get their baby and leave. And nobody's worried about it. Yeah.
You would get thrown in jail for that.
Right.
In the US, but it's common.
Again, it's just
over there.
It's just the culture, right? It's really fun to see that kind of stuff. So anyways.
And I asked a couple of ladies about that, and they said, that number one, they think their children are more independent if they grow up that way. Plus they get them used to the cold. And so they just, they take their naps and that's that.
So could you speak English to many of the people?
Oh, yeah.
Is that common enough?
Almost very everybody common. Spoke English.
Oh,
yep.
Great.
Thankfully, because I didn't speak any Norwegian.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty.
So let's if I'm not missing anything by jumping on board, let's go with what it was like to get on the boat and what was the boat like, the arrangements, and any surprises that way, and how did it go launching from land? Any butterflies? Was it all excitement, positive?
It was 100% excitement, I think, for everybody. Hope I'm not stepping on your toes there, Jason, but I think everybody wanted to get on that boat. And it was an older boat, but it was very comfortable. I have to give a public apology to Russ and Donna. And part of it is their nature is not to complain. Their nature is to go with the flow. But I found out later, I had a really nice room. I was by myself, had a really nice room, plenty of space, too much space actually. And come to find out they were in a staff cabin, which was about a half of mine, if not a third. And they didn't say anything the whole trip. And I felt when I did talk to him, it was well after we got back. Russ finally said, just one thing to be aware of in the future. And I was like, man, I wish he would have said something. I would have definitely moved upstairs. And but they're just not people to complain. They went with the flow and had a great time. But I wish I would have known that. But that being said, the rooms were spectacular. And the first thing that they did was have us all get fitted for the survival suits. So there's a date break where you're required to wear the survival suits if you go on the Zodiac. We were after that date break. So let's just say May 15th, for instance, was the date break. So we had it optional. but I set mine up in my room like a fireman. I had my boots already inside the suit, so all I had to do was step in my boots, pull my sleeves up, zip the zipper, and I was out the door. You didn't have to wear anything else, just that suit. And so I was always the first one out on deck when we'd see a bear or something.
Always the first one. Yeah, and I'm a bigger guy, you know, we all know that. And they did have a suit for me. I put it on and I looked at it and tested it, and it was a little tight in the shoulders, so I opted to not wear mine every day. I just had my muck boots and layered my coats and my parka and went out that way, but which was an option because of the date limit. And we always had to wear when we got on the Zodiacs, we always had to wear a life jacket. Yeah. Which is really the smaller ones that when they hit the water, they inflate. The
inflatable ones.
Yeah. So they're not really in the way. Yeah.
But I think getting on board and getting settled in, the way that it's all timed out with the trip, it feels natural, because while you're settling in, they're taking us out, and we were, outside of the first inlet before we knew we were even gone, just while everybody was getting settled and getting acquainted with the boat, and had a little tour, and the bridge was open so we could go up and talk to the crew and look around. And that, of course, I took my binoculars all the way over there, so I wasn't gonna sit in my room. The thing that sucked the most, I'll be honest with you, the whole trip was there was never any darkness. It was 100% daylight. So I always wanted to be up there looking. I was always afraid I was going to miss something. And so the first couple of days kind of kicked my butt. I was pretty tired, but it was, I don't even remember, Jason, was it day 3 when we saw our first bear?
I think it was the first part of day 3, and it all kind of blurs together because of the fact there was no darkness. But and that actually impacted me more than I thought it would. I thought, this won't be a big deal, but I was shocked at how much it really bothered me and it impacted my ability to get good sleep and so on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it was day 3 before we saw our first bear, and we saw stuff along the way. We did see, I think, a walrus and a seal and some stuff, and we got to get in the water on the day 2 or day 3, it might have been, but with the seal, and got a little bit of stuff like that. And another thing that's cool about this trip, and Ron already kind of alluded to it, but they get you fitted for your safety suits, and they tell you that literally at any time of the day or night, they could come and say, "We got a bear, get your stuff and let's go." And they will. And you always have the option. Yeah. And they come through pounding on the cabins, and we all tried to make sure that everybody knew, because everybody said they want to go if there's an opportunity. They don't want to be asleep in their cabin. So we made sure everybody was awake and was aware, and helped the team with that as well. But it was pretty quick. It was like a fire drill, literally. Like Ron doing his thing the way he did was really smart, and we all kind of figured out the process. But it was literally, come through, boom, 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 knock, hit the deck. And by the time we got out there, they were lowering the Zodiacs in the water and starting to load us on, because, the opportunity may not last. So, that part of the process was interesting too. But yeah, anyways, Ron, to answer your question, yeah, I think it was day 3 before we saw our first bear, but we did see a couple things before we got to that. Mm-hmm.
So this ship's like, it's an icebreaker, right? It has a thick hull. It can handle. I think
they call it either a class C or a class 3 icebreaker. So it was smaller, and it couldn't go through hard ice or fast ice. It was still connected to the shoreline, but it could go through any floating ice. Which is where most of the bears were hanging out. That's where they're hunting. So they were in that breakup ice, or flow ice, they called it.
And how many staff on the boat would there be, as well as the 12 of you?
I think there were 7.
Okay.
Is that right?
7 staff plus our guides.
Our guides. I think
that's right. Okay.
So it could, 22 or 23 people, I think.
Big ship. Yeah.
And Jens, who's Swedish, and Swain were our primary guides. Jeanette was helping, and Jeanette was going through some classes to get her guide's license. So, there was a lot of time where she was up on the deck studying with the captain and the first mate, because she had to go through like a navigation class. While we were on the trip, she was studying for her navigation class and questioning them, and they would ask her questions and that kind of thing, plotting courses and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty interesting to observe that as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's all part of the experience, right? And for them to be able to pull this off, they all have to have that certification and confidence. And so you have the confidence in them. So when you get on the Zodiacs, there's 2 Zodiacs, there's a handful of people in each one. And what was the range like from the ship to bears? Like, were they often close, or did you have to go out half a mile on the Zodiac? What was that like for somebody who's contemplating? I mean, that would be awesome to be eye level, which is, I guess, why that makes sense to go out on the Zodiacs. But just distance wise. Yeah.
Jason, was it our 4th bear? So fifth bear.
Fifth bear. No, it was fourth bear, right? Because we did the mom and the cub.
Yep.
Right. That was our first encounter.
Male
and then
was
the
the same day.
Yep. And then I think the next day was when we saw the Grinch, right?
Yeah, but we were on the main boat.
For
the Grinch. We didn't.
Right. Sorry. The 5th bear is the first time we got in the boat for the Zodiac.
Was the Zodiac. So talking to about your proximity, we didn't really know what to expect. I went out there with my 200 to 400. Jason, looking at the images that you got, I'm assuming you had your 70 to 200 on.
I did. At
least one of the camera bodies, because you got where I was tight, and then I look at this nice, beautiful wide angle scene that you got. I couldn't have got that with what I had. So I know you had at least a wider angle set up on one body.
Yeah.
But that day, proximity was a little bit too close. So we got the wide shots, we got the scenic stuff, the day before, or a couple of days before that. And so we're on this boat, and I had been giving Jason crap the whole time, because Jason's style, right, is these beautiful dark backgrounds and these animals coming out of the shadows. And I'm like, yeah, good luck, Sparky. Let's find out how good you are. There's no way you're getting a dark background on this trip. And sure as heck, we get on the Zodiacs, and this bear starts walking this bank, and she's going up over these ridges and kind of staying above the shoreline. And all of a sudden, she just decides she's going to detour and go right down in the rocks. And I'm like, I'm looking ahead at where she's headed, right? And I turned to Jason. Jason and I were in the same Zodiac. And I turned to Jason. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. She's headed right for this black set of rocks. And Jason just starts laughing. He goes, yeah, I told you I'll get it. And sure as heck, she went right for these black rocks and got this beautiful background, and the contrast of that clean white bear against those black rocks it was awesome.
Yeah.
But it sucked because I had to totally eat crow right there on the Zodiac. But I was getting these headshots because I was super tight on this bear, and we came in perpendicular. She was walking along the shoreline, and we came in perpendicular, and she sat down on her butt like a puppy dog. And she kind of put her head down and started yawning. It looks real menacing, but she was just yawning, and we're floating in, and I had the 200 to 400 has a teleconverter built in. So I'm shooting at 560 millimeter and getting these full face shots of this bear that's looking down at us, yawning. And this Amy Harris, Adventure Amy, was right next to me in the front of the boat. And then Kelly was on the other side. And Amy finally turns around, and she is the nicest, sweetest lady. But she turns to the guide and was like, would you get us out of here? And that was the first time I had looked up away from my viewfinder. And I looked up, and we were about 7 yards from this bear. It was way too close. And then the bear kind of stood up and started wagging his butt or her butt. And at that point I was like, yeah, she's going to jump right in the middle of me, because I was laying on the front and I couldn't really move. And fortunately we got going the opposite direction and got out of there. But
she even did a little test, dropped her shoulders and kind of,
the bank kind of sloughed and she had to back up and reset. And the other boat got a picture of it with the cell phone. I think it was Russ. Got a picture with her cell phone when it was getting ready to come greet us.
Could have got a little Western.
It could have, but it didn't, and it was awesome.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Well, makes for a good story.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask with the zodiacs, given the remoteness and stuff, if the bears minded the zodiacs or whether they were curious, being predators. And obviously this story just answered my question. I mean,
right.
The tolerance and acceptance.
Yeah, they're curious. Yeah, they're curious, like most of the, not like most animals. The one boar we saw, that younger boar that we saw after the first two bears, he wasn't really wanting anything to do with us. We got a few photos of him, nothing really good. We could never, we were trying to position ourselves in front of him, but he started running. So we didn't want him, a big rule is, we don't want to pressure the wildlife. Right. So when the bear started running, they stopped and backed off and we just let him be, but he just really didn't want anything to do with us. So, it varied. It depended on the bear, right? They have personalities.
The individual for sure.
Yep, exactly. So, but that, you want to talk about proximity? Our fourth bear we saw, I don't know if you want to jump into that, Ron. It was actually the day before, a couple days before that, the fifth bear, but that was even closer. And it's an interesting story. So
Jason was pissed at the captain.
A little bit.
So Jens,
at first.
So Jens, again, Swedish guide. He's up there in the Arctic all the time. And this dude had some amazing eyes. And he knew there was a carcass there and he knew there was probably a bear in the area. But how he saw it, where it was like, so there are these ice heaves, and this bear was laying in the middle of these ice heaves. And you could see this little patch of mustard colored, and that's what they kept trying to get me to look for. They said, don't look for white. It's not going to be white. It's going to be kind of mustard colored when you see it. And he saw it, and I looked for probably 5 minutes, and I still couldn't see it. And we were a long ways away from it, but we kind of headed toward it a little bit, and then they turned. So the bear was still 400 or 500 yards away.
Yeah.
And they turned and kind of nosed over toward the carcass. And a couple of people were upset because we wanted to go to the bear, everybody wanted to photograph the bear. That's why we were there. And they said, no, it's going to get up. It's going to go check the carcass because we won't leave any fat on that carcass. It's going to go check the carcass. And then who knows, maybe it'll get curious and it'll come over and check out the boat, is the way they said it. And the bear, I don't know, we were there for 30, 40 minutes. The bear got up, meandered past the boat, parallel to the boat. Everybody's getting these great images. Goes past the boat, goes to the carcass. And then it laid there for, I don't know how long. It didn't matter. Time was standing still. Then we had the bear. So, but it went over and investigated the carcass, chewed on the carcass a little bit, played with it, hauled it around, threw it around. And then like the bear was reading the same script. Let the carcass go after it was a while because I was taking cell phone video or taking pictures, getting images from different positions. So we were there for a long time while it was with the carcass. And then she just got up and kind of meandered in this serpentine line going from ice to ice and came right to the boat. And literally, I don't know, 6 feet.
Well, so one time she stood up by the boat, and if you were dumb enough to reach over, you could have been within a foot or two of her. Honestly,
Yeah.
nobody was, obviously.
It was close,
yeah.
and it couldn't get on the boat. There was there was a metal, the metal barrier on the outside of the boat, and so we were safe. The bear was safe, but it's like what you see from the tundra buggies up in Churchill. Those bears come right to them, and that's what she did. Came right over to check us out and sniffed the boat for a while and kind of posed back and forth like she was looking at people. And that picture right over my head was when she was walking right at the boat. And I laid down. Everybody was up shooting, or most people were up shooting over the top of the rail. And I came around the corner because there was about a 4-inch gap for the water to flow off the deck underneath. And so I laid down on the deck, and actually Jens was in that position as well. And so he gave me his spot. I laid down on the deck, and that's how I got kind of a lower perspective compared to what was happening up over the top of the deck. I wanted to try to get as low as I could, and it only changed things about 4 or 5 feet, but it was enough to get a different perspective, at the distance we were shooting.
Yep. And with the boat, so the listeners understand that, I mean, the metal hull, you're up above the bear too, right? I mean, that picture's fantastic, but she was obviously still a ways out coming in.
She was a ways out. So the perspective looks low, but really we were probably, I don't know, still 6 feet above her.
Probably,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what an experience to have that intimate, that close, just to be able to see the animal like that.
Yeah.
And document it so many ways.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say, and this bear is a fairly well-known bear, and I think she's no longer alive,
She's
right? Is that true?
Deceased.
Rob?
Yeah.
And they're not sure what happened, but they actually called her the Grinch. I said that earlier, right? And I think she's been on some.
At first, but I don't. Now that she's not around, it's not funny.
Well, yeah, that's not funny for sure. But she was well known, highly photographed and videoed. She's been on some Nat Geo specials and other things as well. She got her nickname because she has learned how to hunt reindeer.
She specialized in reindeer instead of seals. So yeah.
Right.
Okay, so she's giving Santa's team a hard time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
But so it was cool that we got to see her too. Actually, that bear, and she was gorgeous, as you can see, and she gave us just an amazing experience and quite the show. Mm-hmm. That whole evening, we were all living on a high. I mean, and you got to understand that a lot of the folks that went with us on this trip, it's a lifelong dream for them to see a polar bear in the wild, and to have that bear come up that close and give them that experience. Let's just say there were some tears being shed.
There were tears shed. I got Jason and Carla Cox. They were sharing this as a couple. Sharing this trip as a couple, and I got a video clip of, Carla just posted something the other day, a memory from the trip, and I said, "Yeah, just wait till I send you this one." And it was like Jason, just this huge smile on his face, and Carla's taking pictures, and they looking at each other, and it was just one of those times that. It's kind of like seeing the aurora for the first time, when it's super bright. It's just kind of got that magic in it.
Absolutely.
And that moment, that encounter, just had that little bit of magic, I think, for everybody there. It's why we went. It was what we went for,
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get to be in the Zodiacs with her, but we tried. A couple of days later, she was like, taking these huge dives off the ice. And so we were going to go out. The shot that I wanted was a jumping / diving bear. And we saw it happening from way out. It was probably, 3/4 of a mile away.
Yeah.
So we got on the Zodiacs and went out there. And all of a sudden, once we get out there, total fog. You couldn't see anything at all. And
started snowing pretty good too.
It started snowing. We never did see the bear, but we got back and it was like a bunch of little kids in a raft. They knew where we were headed. they got us back safely for sure. But everybody's opening their mouth and catching snowflakes on their tongue, and it was just a
taking
time.
it in.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, that's what it should be, right? They always have to reflect on that. It's just not about photography, only about photography. Photography is a lot of it, but there's so much more to trips like this, the friendships that last a lifetime, the experiences, and all the side pauses, taking it in, right? Yeah. I just wanted to mention quickly that you're talking about Jeanette Fraser, and photos by Jeanette on Instagram. You mentioned that before. She was kind enough when we were doing our book on caribou, and because it represents caribou across the globe. I mean, we do focus on North America, of course, but with the reindeer there, because that was happening, that polar bears were preying on reindeer. It was kind of new with the discussions of climate change and the worries about that, and ice not forming as early or dissipating earlier in the year. Polar bears looking for other food sources, and it's become known that they're in Norway and Svalbard preying more often on reindeer. And she was wonderful enough to send me a photo. It's probably Grinch with a carcass that we used in the book.
Yep, I would bet.
To illustrate the story and to, complement the writing with it. And what's interesting about their strategy, you think, well, how do they get reindeer? They're pretty fast. They scare them into the water, and the reindeer swim, and polar bears are stronger, faster swimmer than reindeer in the water, or caribou, and catch them in the water and then kill them and drag them back to shore to consume them. So it's very interesting. I mean, there are other things happening with polar bears in Canada that has been recognized as well more recently. But as far as the reindeer situation with these ones in Svalbard, it's very interesting, and I appreciate Jeanette sharing her story and the image for that as well. And then she got more, I think, the next year that were even more powerful illustrations of. Yeah,
they've got a friend that was working on a documentary, and once while we were there, one of the shots that they wanted for the documentary was from above. They wanted drone footage of a bear moving on the ice. And so Jens was getting some video, and they run them down. So looking at the footage that Florian, their friend, has gotten, they run them down in the snow just as easily as they do on the water. It is not a problem.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was.
Could it be pretty crazy
stuff.
Snow?
Yeah, it was.
If it's deeper snow, then they have the
deeper snow, and of course the bears. They use the terrain. They're really smart, incredibly smart animals. So they're using the topography, using the terrain to their advantage, getting close, and then over the short distance, they run them down, no problem at all.
Wow.
To see some of that footage was just incredible, and then obviously seeing the bear from above. It was an honor to be there and to see all this stuff happen. And go ahead, Jason.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
One of the highlights too for me was that we actually had a night where Sven shared a bunch of his images and video with us. We just sat, and there was a common area like that we could all just sit and chat and drink coffee, tea, hot chocolate, whatever you wanted. And
whatever that hot juice was.
That stuff was incredible.
Man. I might fly back to Norway just to get that.
Right? No kidding. I can't. What was it called? I can't remember.
I have a picture of it, so I wouldn't forget. But.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll have to bring that up some other time. But it was just really good. But anywho, having him share a lot of his experiences from being up there all of his years guiding, and some of the incredible images and videos that he's been able to get, and that was a highlight for me too. Just being able to hear him tell the stories behind them and stuff. It was pretty cool. So, yeah,
and the other wildlife there, the bearded seals, the harbor seals, we saw minke whales, we saw walrus, and we saw a big pod of belugas that we were able to get some drone footage of, because up there it's legal.
Yeah.
So to see all that wildlife, for me, you guys know my background and how much I love the marine life. that was like I was a kid in a candy store. It was everything was just amazing. And then we had a better encounter with belugas later on in the year.
That's for another time.
That's for another day. That's for another day. But
I thought on closing this segue to another adventure that you two had, and that's a great one. I love that it was different than what other people have done, and that'll come up in the future Beyond the Wild podcast.
But this one, Mark, it was incredible the whole time. There was one day.
I was just going to say, we cannot not talk about that day.
No rough seas.
One day it was not incredible. I think everybody threw up. I don't know of anybody on the trip that did not throw up. I don't know.
Some of the staff didn't. A lot of the staff did.
A couple of the staff guys. Heinrich was a Swedish guy, and so a lot of the staff, they go on to be crew for these boats just to have the opportunity to go out and see the bears. So it's the same for them as it is for us, but they're getting paid to work on the boat and crew the boat. So half the time they're taking care of us, and Heinrich was a steward, but what his real job was is he worked on crab boats in really rough seas. And so Heinrich it got to the point where they were kind of friends and friendly, and we'd spend a lot of time visiting. And so if we'd go out on the Zodiac, if we had room and the water was calm, they could come with us, kind of thing. But anytime there was a bear, he was out photographing the bear too. That's why he was there.
Yeah.
And he was just like totally comfortable, because on the crab boats, that's just another day at the office, and everybody was just getting pitched around. I was up on the deck and it wasn't too bad, but I took some video with the cell phone, and then I had knowing that we were going out into this rough stuff, because we had to leave this one fjord system and travel back north toward Longyearbyen to get back in this other fjord system. But they knew in between the two it was going to be rough, so I put a GoPro out on the deck and just clamped it onto a rail, so I could get the waves breaking up over the front, and then obviously but it had the horizon lock on it. And so you didn't get that big 45-degree shift. So I went up on the deck, and nobody was allowed outside, so I couldn't go adjust it. But I stood in the cabin and videoed with my phone, and it was crazy. It was definitely a 90-degree shift, pitching right to left. And as soon as you lost the horizon, my stomach just started tumbling. And as soon as I went downstairs to the cabin, it was like, I ended up with a black eye.
To yourself? By
Oh yeah, self-induced completely. I was going in the bathroom to try to keep from getting sick in my room, and I slammed against the corner of the door, and they had warned us that was going to happen. Then they said, don't put your hands against the door. And sure enough, I did. And I ended up losing a fingernail after we got back, but because the bathroom door slammed on my finger. But that's just one of those Ron things that happens on every trip. So it's no biggie. But yeah, it got me pretty good a couple times. But I was laying there trying not to throw up and watching my coat. My coat was up and just watching my coat go like this the whole time. It was crazy. But
yeah, you'd try to lay in the bed, right? And you'd lay down, and it would force your head into the pillow really hard, and it would go back to the way so hard you'd literally lift. Yeah. And so it was like, I mean,
that's
10
impossible not to get
8
sick.
to 10. Yeah, 8 to 10 foot swells.
Below deck, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's the problem, right? Even looking out your window, you're seeing ocean, sky, and there was no in between. And when it was rollers is what I was trying to say. So we weren't hitting him head on, which would have been way different. And the fact that we were doing this, you know what I mean? Oh, wow. So it wasn't like even dead sideways, but it was like a roll, and just that motion for 12 hours straight. I mean,
I have no idea. It was too long. I know
it
that.
wore us straight out. Yeah, it was rough. So
Yeah.
but it was all part of the experience, honestly. After it was over, it was fine. But
well, it's just one day out of 12. I mean, nobody wants to have that experience. I've there have been times I thought I had good sea legs, and then I've been corrected at times too. You know, it's just,
I do not.
Well, depends on the diet.
Absolutely
the amount of sleep.
do not. Yeah.
I've never been seasick. And so this was the first time. And so knock on wood, right? I never say never. And I was over there. It was funny. Our buddy, Jeff and Angie Birmingham, they went with us as well. And Jeff spends a lot of time in the ocean down in the Gulf fishing and stuff. And when they told him that it was going to be like 8 to 10 foot swells, which means that tip of the wave to the bottom is more like 16 to 20 feet, right?
20 feet. Yeah.
Wow.
So pretty significant. And he came to me and he heard me saying, I don't really get seasick. And he came up to me and said, hey man, I know, but this is legit. It's like, if you got some Dramamine, you need to take it. Trust me. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. So I even took Dramamine and it still didn't work. So,
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fun.
It was, but then, I mean, after we got through that and got back up north is when we had our best bear encounters. And we had a walrus up there that, I don't know. It was no more than 10 feet from the boat.
No. Oh, it was a walrus and a mom and a baby.
No.
You're talking about the big boat.
Yeah,
right.
In the good light. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then the walrus and the mom and the baby with the calf, and the calf was like off I didn't even know I got this video, but I was videoing mom, and then all of a sudden the calf popped up out of the water and like was looking right at the camera. So that was pretty cool too. And to them, walrus are like, I don't know. It would be like me photographing pronghorn. It's just not going to happen. There's no reason to stop. But for us, it was novelty, and so they made a point to stop at all those. There was one haul out that we were hoping to get to, which we had to kind of race to beat some weather, or beat the worst part of the storm. We went through some nasty water, but it wasn't the worst part of the storm. So they got us out of there. So we weren't able to get the haul out that we wanted to get to, but we did get to go do an ice walk. And this is the one that I didn't talk about before, so we had
this JPEG story.
What's that?
Is this the JPEG story, or is it not there yet?
No, that's a different trip. So,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were all out on the ice, out in front of this glacier. So it was fast ice. So it was still connected. Nothing was broken up. And they just kind of nosed the boat up on the ice and dropped this ramp so we could all get off and take a walk and have some tea out there and just kind of visit. And it was fun. Everybody was visiting. And there was our deckhand, the main deckhand was this like hardened sailor guy. He was Swedish, hardly said anything to anybody for the first 6 or 7 days. And then turns out to be the nicest guy in the world. After, toward the end of the trip, he finally relaxed but he just takes his job very seriously.
Well, he was a safety guy too, right?
He was a safety guy. Yeah.
Right. He took it very serious. Yeah.
And so we were out there, and all of a sudden he drops an F-bomb, and we look, and the boat had completely broken away from the ice. And so the ramp that was out on the edge was about to drop in the ocean. And so they would have had to crane us up one by one to get us back on the boat if they weren't able to save so fortunately, they had some safety measures in place, and they got a cable, but that thing almost fell all the way in the water, and which would have left us all out on the ice. And Jason, they say women and children first.
I don't want you to tell this story.
Jason was like pushing all the women out of the way.
Oh, that's not true.
While he's running
that's
to the
not
ramp.
true. You're pushing it that way. That's not true. But I'll put it this way. When I saw it happening, I wasn't going to wait around.
Yeah. He had his stuff gathered, and he was ready to re-embark.
He was just going to grab and get the ramps secured.
I was like the last one out there. Me and Swain were the last ones out there, and it was funny to just watch everybody, because man, as soon as they got the ramp re-secured and got it back up on the ice, it was it was a pretty quick movement, like, to get back on the boat.
It was a cool experience, though, being on that ice, and the ice was starting to deteriorate. Right? They call it rotten. It was rotten ice, so it was still pretty thick, but it was crazy because being on the ice, you could literally it was moving with the waves, right? Mm-hmm. So you could feel the whole earth, or the ice below your feet just moving up and down with the waves. And, I've done lots of ice fishing in my life, whatever, but I've never had an experience like that because those places where I go ice fishing, nothing moves. And so having that experience was pretty cool. And we got photos of us out there on the ice with the boat in the background and the ocean behind it and stuff. It was pretty cool. That was neat. I'm glad they did that and let us do it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. I thought we were walking all the way to the glacier, so I was a little bit disappointed when we got off and walked 50 yards and set up camp.
Yeah. It was funny. We got on the ice and we started walking, and Ron's kind of taking off, and I think Sven was like, "Hey, where are you going?"
We got to stay with the group.
Yeah, you got to stay over here, Ron. Yeah,
there's bears here. Well, yeah, but aren't we going over? Nope.
Then we actually sat there on the ice, and they poured us a hot drink, and we had a little cookie or whatever it was, and just kind of sat there and BS'd and had the experience and took it in, and it was fun. It was nice. And then we actually had one day of and it was the only day that I can recall where it was this gorgeous and sunny, and the water was perfectly clear, unbelievable. The reflections that we were sitting out in the middle of this fjord
mirror.
It was unreal. Yeah. I mean, just gorgeous. And to even have that day where in that area, we did get out for some seals and had a little bit of bird activity. No bears. Would have been amazing if we had a bear encounter in there. But regardless of that, just being in that area for that day and just we kind of set anchor and just chilled for the day. And it was amazing. It was really, really cool.
Yeah. And so we got some crazy footage from a drone. So we were able to get some drone footage of the boat and that whole scene, the way it just mirrored. And this is another pro tip. So pro tip number 2 from the Svalbard trip. When you take off from a boat, even though the boat is at anchor with a drone, do not hit return to home. Because number 1, I hit return to home. Number 2, the battery was dying on the drone. And let's just set the scene completely for this, because they had a board in the cabin with tally marks for the drone, all the drones that had been lost at sea.
And there was quite a few marks.
And there was a lot of marks. And so the captain even said something, because he was a drone pilot, and he even said something. It was Angie's drone. So I felt perfectly comfortable flying this thing. Me and my 10, 15 minutes of drone flight experience. So I take off, get this insane footage of this reflection, with the boat, and it looked fake. It looks completely fake. And then I hit return to home because the battery was dying. And so the drone comes back, but the boat has moved. The boat is no longer at the GPS location that we took off from, because the back of the boat is swinging around. And so by about 15 yards, the drone is landing over the side, and I can't figure out how to override the return to home controls. So the drone gets about, a foot and a half, 2 feet from the water. And I finally just, that thing takes off back straight up. And we had to land it manually. I don't even know who it was, but somebody had to catch it. It might have been you,
I think it was
Jason,
Kelly. I think it was Kelly that caught it.
Had to catch it because I couldn't figure out how to land that sucker. And the battery was toast. It was like beeping at me when I started to land. And then by the time we got it in hand, it was doing the beep, 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 beep. It was done.
That's
and
close.
So we almost had to buy Angie a new drone.
So it was just a manual override, just by pushing up that did it?
Yeah, but it didn't want to cooperate. I mean, that sucker wanted to land. It was going down fast. And and I'm not experienced. So it was like trying to figure out what knob to move where to get that thing to go back up. And So
Hey, the good thing is those drones do exactly what you tell them to do.
yeah.
So you got to be real careful
Yeah.
what you tell them to do.
But it was beautiful there. And they, that little cove or that little inlet where we were inside that, it was kind of a mid north-south fjord system from Longyearbyen to the southern tip of Spitsbergen. They said that the year before there'd been like 200 narwhal in there, and they had been able to see the narwhal, and that was my number one,
That would have been cool.
So I was excited,
happen,
but it never happened. Yeah, we didn't see any sign of narwhal on our trip, but we did have a great trip. And then the blue whales the migration is kind of right after we were there. We were kind of on the front end of it, and I was hoping we'd get lucky there too. But I mean, Mark, you and I when we were in Alaska, we saw the second largest whale in the world. We saw that fin whale, cow and calf, but I've never seen a blue whale, and I would have given my right kidney for that too.
Man. Yeah, Instagram's such at times a visual joy. I've seen drone footage above blue whales that just to put them in scale perspective is mind blowing. It's fully appreciate that magnificent mammal. I mean, just wow. There, yeah. It doesn't take long to start head spinning how amazing this. I've said it earlier in the podcast. This planet is, but yeah, blue whales be amazing. But any of them, belugas, all that is something that's just rare, for us.
And the minke whales that we saw was kind of right on the edge of some fast ice, so it was still connected, and they were diving and going under, and then it was super active. I have no idea how many there were, but I know there was always one up, and they were going different directions. So I don't know how many were in the pod that we saw, but there was definitely multiple whales.
Well, and the minke whales are pretty common up there, I guess, and they're the ones.
Yep.
Yeah, they're the ones that they still do hunt, and that was the type of whale that was on the menu as well.
The Japanese vessels will come all the way around northern Russia to hunt those waters, and that's part of that international piece that we were talking about.
Yeah. Well, historically, it's so rich in marine life along there. Svalbard, Norway.
Yep.
I mean, we've had guests on podcasts that have been there, and a friend of mine actually went there in December for orca and was in the water with the orca.
Kidding me. And Jens guides that. He guides those trips.
It was the story he told me on our WhatsApp calls, because he's never close by. Just blew me away, and in the pictures he showed too and posted on his Instagram. So yeah, it's an amazing part of the world, and for you guys to be there at that kind of pivotal time between winter and summer, and then all the stuff that you saw and experienced, I can only imagine and appreciate through your results.
Yeah, it was amazing. I had pretty high hopes and pretty high expectations, and while I didn't get everything that I wanted, it definitely exceeded my expectations overall.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking through my images the other day too, because I was trying to find my best of 23 kind of thing. And to think that, we got these crazy reindeer images, super close, super tight, running across in front of us. And then I'm looking at these ptarmigan images, and then I start thinking back, and it's like, holy cow, Jason and I laid there, took pictures of this ptarmigan that fed like right to us. And then I walked less than 100 yards and I'm taking pictures of this reindeer. It was right together. I mean, literally walked across the road. And both of those scenes kind of unfolded right there together. It was crazy. And I did get Arctic fox pictures, but nothing that I was hoping for. But we saw the one day that I went, these guys went 2 days. The first day that they went was the cold day when I was getting the reindeer pictures. And then the day that I was able to go, we saw, I think, 5 or 6 fox, but they were all, way out.
Way out. And there was only one of them, I think, that was still, all white coat. They have some issues up there apparently with mange and stuff. And
it kind of looks like mange, yeah. They don't have mice. They don't have mice in Svalbard, which is surprising because they have the ships, and the ships bring the mice, typically.
Right.
But then they said that, or they didn't have mice. And they said that now there's a small population, and they think that's probably where the mange came from. But looking at the images, I don't know that it was all mange, or
I don't think so either.
They were just shedding their
coats, changing,
transitioning from winter to summer.
Yep, I think so too.
Yeah,
we didn't get. That was the only. If I was going to say, was there any disappointments? I wouldn't call it a disappointment, but that's the only thing that I was really hoping to get, that I thought was going to be like a gimme.
Slam dunk.
And it ended up not being a gimme at all. And still a great experience to go out and look for them, take a hike and go look for them and see the country and all that. And glad that we saw some, but still high on my list to get some Arctic fox photos. But the experience was great still. And then everything else about the trip just blew, like Ron said, it blew all my expectations out of the water. And all the birds. I mean, I want to just mention the birds because I think we can come full circle as we kind of wrap this up on the bird piece, and having the folks that were the experts with us, Russ and Myrna. Yeah. I mean, what they were doing is keeping track of actually every bird that we saw, and we were just experiencing it and having fun. And then at the end of the trip, Russ sent an email to all of us. Everybody was on the boat, and he said, "I want you guys to guess how many birds did you guys think that we saw, right? How many species do you think we saw?" And I think most of us were like, oh, I don't know, 20 or 30, maybe 40, something like that. And I don't remember what the number was, Ron, do you? I mean, it was over 100. It was over 100, but it was just like, whoa. I mean, all of us were just shocked. And he listed every single one of them. And awesome. It was really cool to have, seen that as well. And in town, we saw a white, I got some pretty cool photos of a
barnacle goose,
barnacle goose that was leucistic. Yeah. Which was pretty, I guess it's pretty rare. But just to see that and have that experience too. And, like Ron said, all the eiders and the different types of geese. And yeah, it was just all in all, the entire trip was just amazing. So.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you checked a lot of boxes, and like any trip, I mean, it's wildlife photography. So, I mean, we want perfection. We dream of perfection, but then, by not getting every species, when things do fall into place, it's that much richer, right? An experience. I mean, that's part of it. When we get surprised by this, but I think you're both very inspirational in forming this, deciding to do this trip with a group, and just undertaking the adventure. I mean, you deserve props for living life and experience these things and the courage to do that. And I think it makes everybody a broader person to experience not only different parts of the planet, but also the cultures around that too. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it was amazing. I don't know, is it for guests that are contemplating saving their pennies for a trip like this to Svalbard? Sounds like trips run from April through to September or so. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, I think they go to March, and then
okay.
I'm not sure. I think there's too much ice to run after November or so.
So as late as then. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if they even go that long. I know that they were talking about trips in September and maybe early October. And then I think they start doing the Tromsø trips for marine life down there. But I don't know if I don't think they go back up to Svalbard or continue up there. They do have some snowmobile expeditions, but you better be tougher than you think you are.
Yeah.
To go out on those, because it's all winter camping, number one. Number two, the bears are actively hunting, during the winter, and it's a bit, there's a lot of safety things that have to be in place no matter where you're at, and you're definitely in their territory because you're up, kind of where those more mature animals were than what we saw. We never did, that was the other thing. We never did see a mature male. The one boar that we saw was a young guy. just real gangly, look like a teenager kind of thing. But we saw some images of some real mature boars that were way up north, and holy moly, it's a different animal from our bears anyway. The females were huge, a lot longer than you would anticipate. But the big boars, it's a sight to behold.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. All of it, man.
Well, and sorry, real quick, I just don't want to get this.
No, go on with that subject before I ask the next question then.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, because a lot of people want to know this, I think, and it's about like, what was the food like, right? And the crew was amazing. First of all, we were pampered, like literally we had the best crew. A captain with a lot of experience, which is a big deal because there's safety concerns, right? As a matter of fact, while we were up there, another boat had ran aground and had to be evacuated.
We thought we were going to have to go because
and everybody was fine.
If they're close, you have to go. You have to respond. So
right. But our crew was amazing. They kept us very safe. And also the food was just incredible. I mean, we had anything from reindeer. Our chef was amazing. He really had a unique blend. He blended multiple different types of flavors and products, if you will.
Totally forgot about him. He was like Palestinian. He's Palestinian
Italian,
but he grew up in Italy.
Yeah, right.
So he had that Italian mentality and mannerism, and then lived in Norway.
Yeah.
So he had all these different cultures collided just in this one dude, and he was hilarious.
Yeah. It was great. It made for some really good food too. Yeah, honestly, he was incredible. But yeah, they took really good care of us, and like you could be up whenever you wanted, right? You could sleep whenever you wanted. You could be up whenever you wanted. The deck was open. You could always go up on, like Ron said, up to the captain's area and just hang out with them and look for critters or whatever you wanted to do. And there was even a hot tub on board. And a few of the girls, we'll talk about it. A few of the girls used the hot tub, and there was even a sauna on board. And that'll come into play here in just a minute. But the food, you always had food and stuff available to you at any time. I mean, if they serve you a meal, a sit down meal, and then once they clean that up, they put about a bunch of snacks out, and they leave the snacks out basically until the next meal. And then they they set up the next meal, and they have you all come in and you eat at the same time. And then they put out snacks. I mean, it's just, there's 3, meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus, snacks and that in between. So we all bought like stuff to bring on the boat and, like our own drinks and stuff, whatever. And they had all of it there. I mean, it was like, wish we'd have known a little better, because we did not need to bring any of the stuff that we brought. There was plenty of stuff on the boat. But yeah, one of the things we didn't talk about is on that one, right when the storm had gotten, it was after actually, right, Ron?
It was after.
But the storm, so the storm was kind of winding down, but it was still a pretty dreary day, and it was a little colder that day because there was, it was kind of snowing and spitting and stuff. And the 3 of the gals on the boat had said right from the get-go that they were going to do a polar plunge. And so they kind of all like talked each other into it. It was really funny. They kept trying to get us to join. It's like, no, I'm good. I'm not doing any polar plunges. But then they talked it up so much that they couldn't not do it. So they actually they finally got to a point where the captain and everybody said, okay, you guys ready to do it? Jens was like, hey, now's your chance. You got to do it. So they all got in their swimming suits, and they came outside, and everybody was kind of chickening out. And then wasn't it Carla that went first?
It was Carla.
Carla just said,
she was like, screw it, I'm going.
Forget this, I'm going. And they tied a rope around her, obviously, so that she wouldn't like float away or anything. But she just went down the ladder and laid back and dunked underneath and came back out of the water. And then Amy and Angie all had to do it as well. So, and then they all did it, which is amazing. Kudos to them. I'm sure they're glad they did it too. And they got up and they went into the sauna and,
Amy found out how fast the current was. The other 2 just kind of dunked backwards.
Oh, that's right. Amy did let go of the ladder.
Go of the ladder, and it took her. I just saw the video. I slept through it. I was asleep while they were doing that, but I saw the video, and it took Amy pretty quick. There was a lot of current there.
They had to use the rope with Amy.
Yeah, the safety rope.
That was funny. But I mean, kudos to them. I'm not. That's not my style. So.
No. If I would have done it, I would have had ovaries too, because that would have totally changed your anatomy going in that 35 degree water.
Yep. So a big shout out to Amy, Angie, and Carla for doing that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I'm glad I slept through it.
So for people who loved hearing this story, 12 days on a ship, experiencing Norway, Svalbard, all this amazing wildlife, close encounters of polar bears, if they were interested in doing this and wanted to start saving their pennies, ballpark, what did it cost, or what would it cost?
Well, it would be about, so total for the boat, it would be probably 10 to 11,000.
And for the boat, and then
for the
your
boat,
airfare.
And then your airfare. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Airfare, room on, Longyearbyen if you want to stay in Longyearbyen for any time, and
we had to find our own accommodations outside the boat. So there's a hotel there that's pretty reasonable. Mm-hmm. European hotels are not American hotels, so don't plan on having 4 of your buddies stay with you.
No,
nope. They're pretty small, but they're very comfortable. You're not allowed to wear your shoes inside. They're not afraid to tell you to take your shoes off. So,
nope.
And I think most of that comes from the coal mining background in the community. They didn't want to spread that coal dust around anywhere else in the hotel, but they're very comfortable accommodations, and again, very welcoming people.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a substantial amount of money, but I don't, and some people can afford it and some can't, unfortunately. But for those that can, I mean, the numbers make sense, right? I mean, the travel there is a long way to get there. And then you've got this big ship with 7 crew, the fuel, the food, their expertise. I mean, these are professional crew members, all have their roles. They're all certified.
Yep, that's all they do.
And it's your safety. It's, and you come away with this amazing experience. So to me, the money, the cost of it makes sense because of all those underlying fundamental costs for them to pull this off. Right. They all need a good wage. And I can just imagine the fuel costs for the ship and the Zodiacs and maintaining the stuff, the survival suits, all the elements. So,
and then tip, on top of that is tipping the staff, and then you're going to want to take some things back with you. There's things up there that you can buy to bring back that you're never going to find over here. The warmest hats in the world are up there, and
they are,
I guess, but yeah. And
I've been wearing mine this winter, and they are legit.
Yeah, they are legit. I had one on my grandson and one on me the other day when we were out learning how to track.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
But
well, I feel like I understand your adventure a little better now, since I missed out on it, and I've seen your pictures since then. And I know on both your Instagram feeds, people can see images there, as well as on our website, which we are working on right now as this new podcast launching, Beyond the Wild Podcast. It will be on beyondthewildpodcast.com, where
beyondthewildpodcast.com.
all of you can go and find more of our content, our links to our sponsors, pictureline.com, and find out more information there. There's a lot going on. We have other trips planned as well. There'll be information on our tours and our guiding trips. And you can also find us, obviously, on all the podcast platforms. And please take the time to subscribe, to follow. Please share the love that we're back and tell people and get it out there so that we can grow that. We will be doing a couple of podcasts a month that are on all platforms, but we also have a subscription-based episode. That's what we're starting with, is an episode a month. Behind that, it will be a very reasonable amount that just helps us do and cover the expenses, do what we do with this program, and cover the expenses required to put it out. Helps with that. So for those of you that sign up to that, it's much appreciated, and you'll benefit by enjoying that additional content. And there'll be some other promotions and stuff coming along as those get developed as well. And it's fantastic to be back on air, on internet, everywhere with you two. Mm-hmm. Missed you guys. I missed the guests. I mean, we always learn from our guests. They've experienced things that we haven't, insights into their experiences, and great people, the connections, and just, and also the audience, you folks, to be able to share our passion of wildlife photography, our careers, and it spills over into our love of nature and wilderness and wildness, and, to the point where we go beyond the wild and want to share the content with you folks to inspire you along the way as well. You can find us in the very near future on YouTube. You'll be able to watch podcasts on there, in addition to having the opportunity to listen to the audio versions on those podcast platforms. So check us out on YouTube. And again, please subscribe there to give us traction and to help us grow and to get back to where we were and beyond. Guys, it's been fun. Svalbard sounds amazing. I wish I'd gone, the opportunity maybe in the future. I don't know. Maybe I'll say yes next time. But at the same time, I'm thrilled that you had the experiences you had. And thanks for taking the time to share them with us today.
Yeah, it was incredible. It's good to be back. It's good to see you guys and your smiling faces. I'm excited to keep this thing moving forward. So thanks to all you listeners too for the support. Thanks
for everybody that pushed this into fruition.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.